give you a copy of the handouts. Pass over that. One left here. And this is a map of how to find Walker's Star Barn up in Cave Creek if you decide you want to go to that. On the day we're having our star party that afternoon, Ron Walker, who attends church here, has a large planetarium about the size of this room in his yard. And he has a nice $250,000 projector in there to project stars in the ceiling with. And he's offered to do a star party warm-up show for our class that afternoon at 3:30, I think it is. So I need to get a count at this point, so I don't know what to plan on. How many do you think you're going to go to that Star Barn presentation on Saturday afternoon of our star party? About 3:30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's next weekend.
That's 2 weekends. 7. And anybody bring in kids or grandkids with them? You need to know that too.
At least one.
Okay, one, couple.
There'll probably be at least a few more kids.
Maybe 8 kids for now. All right. Thank you. The topic today, we talked last week about the age of the earth question. Impacts Christians a lot in 2 main areas. Number one was the issue of the day itself. And because I want to take the Bible literally, the Bible talks about 6 days of creation. We talked last week about how the Hebrew word for day, which is yom, is a rather vague term. It normally means a 24-hour day, but it can also mean the daylight hours, or the afternoon hours, or an indefinite period of time. We saw several examples last week, for example, where talking about in David's day, yom meaning a long period of time when David was the king. The people wandered in the desert, the Bible says, in the day of their wandering. So it's more than necessarily a 24-hour day. I did relate, though, that there's a possibility, if you look at the days from the viewpoint of how time was being measured at that time, it might have been 6 24-hour days, because we talked about how quantum gravity affects the flow of time. And the universe being younger and denser at that time would have had a much more gravitational force involved, and would have had time flowing at a slower rate. We talked this last week about how to work that math out in that process. The 6 days of Genesis takes about 15.6 billion years ago, which is one of the ages of the universe that's believed to be today. So, looking at a fairly old universe, fairly old Earth, and that certainly is within the age of the universe question. As Christians, we have no need to worry about the 6 days being literal days. They were not 6 24-hour days like we measure time today. They were 6 24 hours as God is measuring time in the higher gravity universe of that day. Gravity affects the flow of time. So as the universe with more gravity power, in the universe of that time flowed slower. So in God's wristwatch, a day on day 1 took 8 billion of our years. So it does work out in 6 days. If we look at the watch that God had on his wrist, not the sundial that Adam had in Eden, okay? And we talked about modern research shows that man began about 40,000 years ago. Modern man arose about 40,000 years ago in East Africa. And somebody said, well, isn't Eden over in the Middle East? Yes, it is. In fact, we now think that Eden was probably located in the bottom of the Persian Gulf, because satellites have shown remains of riverbeds that empty into the Persian Gulf. There were 4 rivers cited in the book of Genesis: the Tigris, Euphrates, Pihon, and Gihon. And those Pihon and Gihon, nobody knows where they are. They're dried up. But satellites show a fossilized riverbed that empties into the Persian Gulf where the Tigris and Euphrates dumped into. And at that time, 40,000 years ago, we were in the middle of an ice age. And so the water level was about 300 feet lower than it is today. The Persian Gulf was dry land. You know, with all that water coming to, it's a very lush, rich environment. So God said that He created Adam, and He placed him, and we know that about 40,000 years ago, people that were created in Africa migrated to the east and ended up in the Persian Gulf. Remarkable, is it not? Okay. The second thing that Christians have trouble with an old Earth is this area of evolution. A lot of time, 14 billion years for the universe, 4.5 billion years for the Earth, gives evolution time to work. And if evolution works, we don't. We've got it. Okay. Charles Darwin's an interesting character. He began his studies as a priest, believe it or not, and lost his faith and walked away from it, became a botanist and a scientist. In the 1840s, he was assigned to the British Navy as a science officer. In the late 1840s, early 1850s, he sailed on the HMS Beagle, a British bark, a two-masted ship. It's not a warship, it was basically an exploration ship. And they sailed the South Pacific, charting new islands, and Darwin's job was to catalog plant and animal life on these islands. In that process, he began to notice that, particularly in the Galapagos Islands, which is off the coast of Chile, that the life forms there were similar to the life forms on the continent, but significantly different. And he wondered, well, why is it that there are finches on the Galapagos Islands as there are over in Chile, 800 miles to the east, but they are a little bit different than the finches in Chile. They have different beaks, different feather markings, stuff like that. And he began to think about that, and he postulated that what apparently makes life take on different expressions are environmental forces. The environmental forces operating in the Galapagos Islands were a little bit different than those operating over in Chile, or Italy, or in Ethiopia, or whatever else. And so in the case of the finches on the Galapagos Islands, there are two basic finch varieties on the islands. One's a short-beaked finch, and one's a long-beaked finch. Now, the Galapagos' primary source of food for birds is the seeds that the plants and flowers produce. The short-beaked finches have an advantage because those seeds are rather hard to crack open. The short beak makes for higher leverage in cracking the nut open. The longer beaked finches have a disadvantage with that. Darwin noticed when he was there studying the islands that there was a drought in the Galapagos Islands, and so the plants responded by having their seeds deeper into the flower now to protect them. So what happened to the short-beaked finches? They started dying off. And the ones that had the long beaks could get to the seeds and survive. They began to increase in population. And Darwin says, this proves my theory. What Darwin forgot to tell you was that later on when the rain came back, population reversed again back to what they were before. He called that process natural selection. That environments are constantly putting pressure on living organisms to survive. Either you adapt to those changes or you perish. If the food source changes, you don't adapt to new food sources, you'll starve. If the climate changes, you don't adapt to the climate, you'll die. If the ice age gets more and more severe, colder and colder, you don't adapt to the cold, you will die, so forth and so on. And so Darwin said it's the ones that don't adapt that die off. The ones that do have some modification, or we now call it mutation, that can handle that pressure and survive. What Darwin did not know was that life was a lot more complicated than he thought it was. And in his day, they didn't have, they had microscopes, they weren't very good ones yet. They knew that there were cells, they had no idea what was in the cells. And that's where Darwin missed the boat. So, if I can get this to work again now, one more that, there we go. This is my connection here. Try this again. If it doesn't work, I'll do it by hand if I have to. Come on, if I might, it's over there. I'll do it by hand. Okay. What Darwin did not know was that there are several things that take place at the molecular level which totally wreck this theory. Okay, first of all, he did not know about what's called specified information complexity. We'll talk about that in a few more minutes, what that means. That there's information in the cells in the form of DNA, which wasn't discovered until the 1950s, that contains the instructions how to build a bird or a fish or a human being or a cow or an elephant or a slime mold or whatever. The remarkable thing about DNA, by the way, is that all the DNA on this planet contains all the instructions how to build a human being. It's that in some plant and animal forms, those genes are turned off, but they're there. Now, why would nature build all that information to the DNA of a bacteria when it doesn't need it? But it's there. Interesting. Also, he did not know about, okay, I think he's losing my connection, what's called irreducible complexity. What that means there's a point at which an organism has to have certain things present to survive. Without those things, it dies. And it's like the chicken and the egg question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The answer is yes. Okay. So irreducible complexity means we come to a point where if we don't have certain things together at the same time, life cannot go on. And the odds of those things coming together by random chance are vanishingly small. The third thing he did not know about was the immense complexity of DNA and its transcription process and information content. Your DNA is remarkable stuff. You have in every cell of your body, your skin cell, muscle, blood, every cell you've got in your body contains a nucleus with DNA in it. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what it stands for. Every cell in your body has that DNA in it. And every copy of DNA in your body is identical to the other copies of DNA. So any cell in your body could theoretically build a new you through a cloning process. Cloning is very difficult to do. That's why you haven't seen it happen yet with human beings. It's been done for animals. The animals are simpler to work with. Human beings are not. In that information content, it tells us how to build an organism, but it also tells us how to build the embryo for the organism, which we didn't know that a few years ago. And in fact, DNA has so much structure to it that we're beginning to figure it out. It was staggering to us. At one time, we figured that about 95% of the human DNA you have didn't do anything, didn't express any kind of physical expression to what we call expression. In other words, some genes didn't give rise to anything in a human being. But we now know that 95% of what's called junk DNA, which was argued by evolutionists as being proof that life evolved haphazardly because all this junk is in the DNA. We now know if that junk controls life at the embryonic level. That's amazing. And there's a level below that that's even more basic. I mean, DNA has a capacity to store all the information in the universe. Isn't that amazing? That's incredible. The DNA strands in your cells are about 6 feet long. They were uncoiled. And all the cells in your body, you got about 12 million miles of DNA inside your body right now. Wow. That's amazing stuff. Darwin didn't know any of that. Okay. So let's talk about these things that Darwin did not know about. First of all, a guy named Michael Denton, the geneticist. Geneticists are people that study genes and how they express living organisms. Between a living cell, even a bacteria, and the most highly ordered non-biological systems, such as a crystal or a snowflake, you look at snowflakes, they're very ornately structured. There is a chasm as vast and absolute as it is possible to conceive. We know that snowflakes form by random actions of atoms and molecules in certain environmental conditions. We know that crystals grow randomly based on conditions in which they're forming. But life is so much beyond that it makes this stuff look like it's tinker toys compared to a space shuttle or something like that. John Lennox, one of my favorite apologists, says even the tiniest of bacteria is a veritable factory containing thousands of exquisitely designed pieces of intricate molecular machinery made up of altogether 100 billion atoms, as small as bacteria. E. coli has 100 billion atoms in it. And something like 12,000 different machines inside this simple little bacterium. But all arose by blind chance, obviously. That's how we explain how it got here. This is DNA, the thing on the left side of the picture. It contains 2 sugar molecules on the outside, across which are strung 3 amino acids. There are 4 amino acids used in DNA: guanine, cytosine, adenine, and thymine. And those are the only 4 that are used, but those 4 combine in different ways with the sugar they're attached to tell the body how to make, for example, serotonin which is a big chemical in your brain. If you don't make serotonin, you're manic depressive. Okay? If you make it, you're okay. And that instruction is someplace on the DNA, one of those combinations tells the brain, okay, make serotonin. Other combinations say make stomach acid. Others say make the skin pink or brown or black. Others say make the eyes green or blue or brown. Others say make the hair black, make the hair gray, make the hair white, make the hair brown, make the hair blonde, whatever. And so on. So these little things, what are called codons, tell the cell how to build the stuff of life. This is a picture showing how this works. Whenever the DNA has to build, when the cell has to build the chemicals of life, it's basically proteins. The DNA unwinds a little bit. A thing called messenger or transfer RNA. Messenger RNA, first of all, goes to the DNA, it's unwound, couples up to it, figures out what has to be built, goes out into the cell, says, hey guys, come here. Transfer RNAs come up to the messenger RNA, attached to it, say, oh, we got to build this piece of the protein. They go over to a ribosome, which is part of the cell, and they build that piece of protein. Remarkable process. Built into this process is an error catching routine that's about 1 billion times more efficient than the error catching routines of computer software. Mutations do occur, but they're very, very, very rare. And most mutations, when they occur, are fatal to the organism. Only 1 mutation in 1,000 is beneficial. So mutations drive evolution. It's kind of the backward way of doing it, don't you think? Okay, that's a possibility. This is a protein. The body uses 20 different proteins in life. These proteins combine in various ways to form up to 20,000 these amino acids combine to form 20,000 proteins. Proteins are very complicated. They contain up to 1 million atoms in them, and they're folded in a very specific way. If the protein does not have the right shape, the body cannot use it. And there are many ways for the protein to fold, most of which are useless. So there has to be a particular set of conditions in the cell to which that massive protein being built by the ribosome begins to fold and convolute itself into the right shape so the body can use it. And that is the big rub for Darwinism. You cannot explain that folding process through natural blind chance. It does not occur. Okay. A guy named Stephen Meyer is a brilliant PhD. And he's the one that wrote an excellent book called Signature in the Cell. It's a rather thick book, about this thick, which describes that 3 levels deep coding of the DNA I talked about a while ago. The basis, that's what the little ladder, rungs of the ladder are, we talked about a while ago, those codons, in DNA and RNA are the sequence of amino acids in proteins do not contain just information. These molecules store information that is also functionally specified. That means it has an instruction on how to do something. It's not just letters, it's words and paragraphs. As such, they manifest one of the kinds of patterns, a functionally significant pattern that routinely leads statisticians to reject chance hypotheses, at least in the case of extremely improbable events, as an example. If you were to win the lottery 16 times in a row, the state might investigate you for being a cheater, because that's just not going to happen. Okay? So statisticians can use. Well, exactly. So this is important to understand that the information in DNA is not just information. It is particular information that has a particular purpose to it. And blind chance would build a blind purpose, not a particular purpose. Does that make sense so far? Okay. We're about to destroy Darwin. Here's an example of function specified information. See that? That makes sense?
Yes.
You're lying to me.
Clear as mud.
This is what it is. Same letters. Okay? Now, what we have, that is random information. What you expect from a random process. This is specified information. We're going to do an experiment. We're going to try to build a protein. Now, the simplest protein has 17 atoms in it. I'm sorry, amino acids, 17 atoms, the simplest amino acid. Well, complicated amino acid has 22 atoms. It's another pretty small molecule. Say 20 molecules, 20 atoms for typical amino acid. I need 16 volunteers to take on one of my boggle cubes. So you just stand up, come up here to the front if you would. I'm going to give you. There's your cube. Stand up, okay, stay up here, stay up here. Okay, some more volunteers, come on, it's not going to hurt. I'm not going to embarrass you very much. Some more volunteers. Come on, Bill, you can do this. It won't hurt. Ow, it didn't hurt. Some more volunteers to do over here. Want to help out? Sure, okay, here you go.
Mel says he wants one. All right.
Here you go, Tracy. Got it. Good. And let's try Marlon. Well, hopefully you're right. I'm out. Okay. So now, come on the board for a second. Can you smile if you would, please?
Good looking crew there, Rich.
They are. You bet I ruined it for them.
So this is the DNA of my Bible. Cool.
We're going to try and experiment. We're going to build a protein, a real simple protein, only 10 molecules or 10 atoms long. And that protein has this structure to it. Now, proteins are specified content molecules. We want to see if we can spell that phrase in my Bible app by rolling these cubes one at a time. This is where y'all get to it. Meanwhile, I'll go over here to the side of the room for a minute over here, okay? So somebody, if you would, come up to the table and roll your cube. And try it again. You got a Z, you lose, sorry. Stay up there, I'm looking for an M. We got a B. We got a D. G. R. O. G. S.
M, right?
Oh, we got an M. But it happened like the 11th or 12th roll.
Thank
We already have spaces on our molecule here, okay? Let's do this. Take a cube. I want you to look on the cube, see if you have one of the letters in my Bible app. We're going to make this easier this time around.
Bless you.
So, who's missing? I don't know.
I got a different cube.
So, you want to find the letters, one of the letters in my Bible app on your cube. If you have one of the letters, stay up here. If you don't have a letter, give me your cube and sit down. You all have one of the letters in my Bible. You don't? Okay, sorry. Thanks for playing. Anybody else? Everybody else? Yours not good? We'll give any good. Got a bad one? Nope, you lose. Thanks for playing. Appreciate it. So we all have, okay, let's do this. Choose among yourselves 10 people that have the letters from my Bible app. Figure out who you got.
I have two letters.
Who's got an M? Okay, you're first. Who's got the Y? Over here. Who's got the V? A B. Okay, Bill, you're next. Who's got the I? Over here.
I just have one.
You got an I? Who's got another B? Hang on, I have one over here already. Who's got another B? Over here. Who's got the E? Over here. A. You're already over here though. A. I got an A over here. And then I gotta have one P and another P.
I got a P.
P and a P. Okay. Especially you guys can see it. Thank you for helping out. So now I've made this easier. Now we have these Bible cubes got 25 letters on them. Plus Q and I or Q and U are together. So that's a combination of the. So we have 25 possible outcomes in each die. So now I have the right atoms in my gene pool to work with.
What a gene pool.
Okay. So roll your cube. H. Hang on. I'm going to write this down. H. Okay. Next person roll. I.
It's like boxing.
D.
My feet landed up.
But it's at the wrong place, wrong order.
A. P. J. L. L. Is that it? Everybody been rolling? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't see one.
Somebody put their.
Rolling for you then. And we have D. Okay. Y'all can be seeing now. Thank you for helping out. I appreciate that. We got a problem. We're trying to build this molecule. Random combination. Now, if I would get really technical, I could have had all the people with the letters roll in the order in which the letters occur, but only 1 in 6 chance, right, of that letter coming up when they roll the cube. So it becomes increasingly difficult to spell it with random rolls of the die. In fact, we can calculate this. How many have a cell phone calculator on your cell phone? Might we get it out? And it's kind of fun to do this. So if we have a 6-sided cube, and only 1 letter on that cube will fit my molecule, what are the odds of rolling an M on the first roll? I got 25 sides altogether. 1 in 25. Okay. What's the odds of rolling the Y? Okay. And the B? 2 in 25. And so on, all the way across. So the total odds of rolling my Bible app with random rolls in the proper order is equal to, probability equals 1 over 25th to the 10th power. You got a cell phone, you can type in 1/25 equals, and then take that result, whatever that is, and you're going to have a key of something like this, probably x to the y on it. Punch that key and then punch in 25, or I'm sorry, 10 for y, and that'll give you the odds of building my Bible app out of random rolls of the dice. So if you do that, 1 out of 25 to the 10th power, it's a real tiny number, 0.000 something, right? When you get that done, if you have a reciprocal key, which looks like this, 1 over x, punch that key, see what number comes up.
I need to upgrade my phone.
The answer, I don't have the answer on the board for you. The answer is 31 trillion. Just the number, 31 trillion. So the odds of rolling my Bible app with random molecules is 1 in 35 trillion. At rolling 1,000 rolls per second, it would take us 3.5 million years to have a chance of having that come up once.
That's how easy it is to win the lottery.
Yes. And that's only half as complicated as the most basic amino acid. And amino acids combine into chains that are sometimes 80,000 amino acids long to make a protein. You see where this is going? Random combinations just don't cut it. There's not enough time to produce a living organism through random combinations. If we could form, even this thing could form an amino acid by random combinations. Amino acids are somewhat fragile. They don't survive outside the cell very long. How is that going to survive long enough to become part of life later on without the cell membrane to protect it, which is the problem with irreducible complexity. Without the membrane, the protein, the amino acid must survive. How do we get that to survive without the protein around it to protect it? See, the chicken and egg situation, doesn't it? And it gets crazier yet. We're just getting started with this nonsense, okay? So we have this really remote chance of forming my Bible app. It would be 10 times, factor of 10, it'd be 100 times worse, 1 in 3.1 quadrillion, to form a 20 atom protein, amino acid by chance. And then to string the amino acids together to make proteins, it's even more ridiculous. Darwin didn't know that. Now we know that. Yes?
How did the scientists find all this out?
Make up a lot of it. We make up a lot of it. Research, a great deal of research. And this is a mathematical theory, probability theory, right? And that's easy to do with this stuff. You only have so many possible outcomes with the roll of the die. And so you have to look at the mathematical possibilities. You've got 20 amino acids you have to make a protein, so you have a total of 20 letters, which themselves are made up of letters. It's kind of like, okay, an amino acid is a letter, like A, B, C, or D. A protein is a word. And a series of proteins becomes a story or a book. So what are the odds, do you think, using die like these and random to make up Hamlet? That's a pretty simple piece of word. Think about it. Or what are the odds of making the Bible by randomly rolling lettered cubes all day long? Specified information. That's what this is all about.
Another thing too, this is tied in with the actual DNA. So this is the code that's actually generating the actual other
The information,
molecules.
exactly.
So like you said, which came first, the other molecules or did this one? So what do you have?
Yeah, that's right. So if you're going to build DNA is even more complicated than this. Okay, DNA, like I say, is a 6-foot-long molecule in your cells, not like 12 million miles worth of stuff in your body altogether. DNA is far more complicated than a protein. How do you build DNA by random combinations? Then have that DNA specifically say, make me brown eyes, black hair, 6'2", diabetes, coronary heart disease. How do you do that with random combinations? There's not enough time to do. Yeah.
That's why they say certain diseases are genetic.
Right. A lot of them are genetic. Diabetes is genetically inherited. Heart disease can be inherited. So that's not mental disease can be inherited from genetics. Because the brain relies upon chemicals to be stable. If the genes don't tell how the chemicals, what happens to your brain? It scrambles. Excuse me. Another way of looking at this. Hugh Ross, the astronomer, talks about the odds of process of producing life at random. Cover America with dimes, with coins, in a stack reaching to the moon. Then do the same for 1 billion other continents. Paint one coin red and put it somewhere in one of the billion piles. Blindfold a friend and ask her to pick it up. Those are the odds she'll pick up that red coin on her draw. Well, now Ross is optimistic. I'm going to give you the ones even more devastating. This is from John Lennox. Excuse me. If we had a pool consisting of all 20 of the amino acids, the probability of getting 100 amino acids in the right order, making a very simple protein, would be about 1 10 to the 130. It would be 1 to 130 zeros after it. And thus, vanishingly small. Life as we know it requires thousands of proteins. It's been calculated that the odds of producing these by chance is more than 10 to the 40,000 to 1. But on a 1 in 40,000 zeros to 1, that's the odds of making stuff of life by random chance combinations of atoms and molecules. Even better than that. Stephen Meyer again. The probability of finding a functional protein by chance alone is a trillion times smaller than the odds of finding a single specified particle among all the particles of the universe. And yet, Darwinists still preach evolution as if it were the gospel truth. It's not about what the facts say, it's what your belief system tells you. To a Darwinist, we cannot have God. That's not allowed. Okay. There was a symposium in 1966 in the New England states called the Wistar Symposium. And it was a collection of biologists, mathematicians, geneticists, chemists, to discuss this problem of the chance arising of life. And the mathematical side of the team, the physicists and engineers and the mathematicians, were stunned of the biologist's confidence in the power of mutations to produce new life forms. Remember, one mutation in 1,000 is beneficial. And for mutations to survive and become useful, they have to be occurring in a rather large population that reproduces quickly. Okay, elephants don't reproduce very quickly. How's a mutation affecting hybrid of elephants? Okay. Humans don't reproduce all that quickly either. How's a mutation in a human being going to benefit humanity? It may have a toehold someplace, but no, the odds are so small, so vanishingly small. You've got to want to believe in this stuff to make it even make sense to yourself. What about the fossil record? That's a good one. There are fossils in Arizona. You've ever seen it before? Digging up down to Florida County, you can find fossils all over the place. Okay, Darwin's own fatal word. This is what I like about Darwin. He was at least a little bit honest. The number, what we call intermediates. Now, if you think about this, if I have an animal, say, 80 million years ago, it might have been a horse this tall. That was not normal for a horse a long time ago. Now horses are quite a bit tall. So we should have fossil evidence of horses that are in between sizes between then and now, right? What are called intermediates. The number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed on the earth should be truly enormous. Why then is not every geological formation and every stratum of fossils full of such intermediate links? It's not. Geology surely does not reveal any such graduated chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection that can be urged against my theory. If it can be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed using numerous successive slight modification, my theory would absolutely break down. Guess what? It breaks down. Gerald Shore, the physicist we talked about last week, is a popular impression that fossils have proven the validity of classical evolution. Yet most paleontologists, those are the guys that study fossils, will tell you that's not true. According to the picture presented by the fossil record, bursts of morphological or shape change occurred within startlingly brief periods of time. The rapid changes cannot be explained by random mutations to the molecular genetic level. According to the fossil record, gradual evolution is found to be false at every major morphological step. Now, stop for a moment. The word evolution has 14 definitions. I accept some of them. Okay? Evolution means change in time. I buy that. Things do change over time. I believe in what's called microevolution, that organisms can change a little bit generation to generation. Human beings are taller than they were 500 years ago, for example. That's microevolution going on. But a human being has not become a fly. Or as a monkey, become an elephant.
Wait a minute, I saw a movie where a guy.
I know.
That was scientific.
Oh, sorry. Not the same thing.
First, one-celled life sprang into being as soon as water was present 3.8 billion years ago. We got discovered this in Australia just about a month ago. Think what that means. They discovered evidence of life in Australia that goes back 3.8 billion years. There was a 4.5 billion years, 700 million years after the Earth was formed. Allow about 600 million years for the Earth to cool to form oceans, because you have to have oceans to have life. And within a couple hundred million years of that, the oceans were full of life. Darwin says it takes a lot of time to make life. Not enough time, 300 million years to do that. In fact, the book of Genesis says, and God said, prepared the earth, so let the earth bring forth life, what? Abundantly. And it did. The earth was made for life. And when God saw the time was right, okay, boom, phytoplankton in the oceans. And for the next 3 billion years, those little one-cell organisms began changing the atmosphere, which at that time was poisonous to us. But they gradually put oxygen into the atmosphere, took the carbon dioxide out of it, and eventually made possible for complicated life, like you and me, and dogs and cats and fish, and kangaroos, to take hold and flourish. It's amazing. One might have expected that complex multicellular organisms would then have developed in orderly successive changes from 3.8 million years ago on. That's not the case. Instead, a gradual, steady thrust of life evolving complex structures. We had 3.2 billion years during which life remained confined to one-cell organisms, followed 650 million years ago by the simple globular forms of uncertainty identity known as Adaicara fauna. Darwin repeats several times in The Origin of the Species, which is a mistitled book, by the way. He never explains the origin of species in the book. That nature does not make jumps. This is simply false. It does make jumps. Transitional forms are totally absent from the fossil record at the basic level of phylum and rare and ever present at all in the class level of biology. On no less than 7 occasions in Origin, Darwin implores readers to ignore the evidence of the fossils. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Now let's look at this next thing. It'll blow your mind. We talked about that pretty much. The Cambrian explosion. You ever heard of this before? Anybody ever heard of the Cambrian explosion? In Canada, there's a place called the Burgess Shale. What it looks like. And up close, looks like this. It's just full of fossils. And we also found the same layer now over in China recently. So we now know it's 2 different places around the world, the same formation shows up. So it's not just a fluke, it's a worldwide phenomenon. Okay, what happened with the Burgess Cambrian explosion? The Cambrian era in geology 650 million years ago, long before there were even dinosaurs. There weren't even plants on the planet yet, just one-cell organisms in the sea, basically bacteria and maybe simple sponges. We're not sure about that, but sponges don't find any fossils. It's kind of hard to tell for sure. All right. It happened very fast. It took 5 million years for the Cambrian explosion to take place. Well, that's like faster than a blink of the eye for Darwin. That's like almost presto, here they are. And God told the earth to bring forth life, and it did so abundantly. There are no signs of intermediates or evolution in the strata of rock. Each animal form appears fully developed. Bing! Right there. There's nothing leading up to that particular animal form. There are 40 body plans in the Cambrian explosion layer of rock. The same 40 body plans we have on the Earth today. They all came forth immediately at the same time at this point in the Earth's development. It's called biology's Big Bang. Okay? It's still ignored in biology textbooks to this date, 400 years after it was discovered. In fact, the man that discovered this worked for the Smithsonian Institution in the 1880s. When he discovered these fossils, he buried them in the basement of the Smithsonian, refused to write about it. In the 1960s, a graduate student found these fossils and wrote a paper about it. And the National Geographic ran an article that particular year, is Darwin dead? Because what Darwin said could not happen, happened. In 5 million years, 40 different body plans emerged, fully developed, no intermediates. That's amazing. David Rolfe, a Christian paleontologist, says that we now have 250,000 fossil species, but the situation hasn't changed much. The record of evolution is still surprisingly jerky, and ironically, we have even fewer examples of evolutionary transition than we did in Darwin's time. What else can we say about this stuff? Evolution, Miles Eldridge. He's an evolutionist. He believes in evolution. He says this: when we do see the introduction of evolutionary novelty, in other words, a new life form or a new organism comes up, it usually shows up with a bang, and often with no firm evidence that the fossils did not evolve somewhere else. We paleontologists have said that the history of life supports the theory of gradual adaptive change, knowing all the while that it does not. When species appear in the fossil record, they tend not to change very much at all, often for millions of years. Once a life form appears, it doesn't change. Microevolution, yeah, it might get bigger or smaller or something like that. But it does not become, a horse does not become a bird. A snake does not become a monkey. Get the idea?
A monkey does not become a man.
Fred Boyle, the astronomer we talked about last week, says it very well, as common sense would suggest. Darwinian theory is correct in the small. Microevolution, yes, but not in the large. Rabbits come from other slightly different rabbits, not from either primeval soup or potatoes. Where they come from in the first place is a problem yet to be solved, quite much else at cognitive scale. Stuart Kaufman is a believer. He says that anyone who tells you that he or she knows how life started on the earth some 3.8 billion years ago now is a fool or a knave, because nobody knows. And yet, evolution is accepted by zoologists because the only alternative, special creation, is clearly incredible. It's not about the facts, it's about belief systems. For me to allow special creation for life is to say there might be a creator to this universe. He, in fact, may be a little bit like the thing you talk about in your Bible, and I can't have that. I can't be held accountable for my lifestyle. I'm going to do what I darn well please. You don't like it? That's tough. But God may have something to say about that someday. And that makes people very nervous. Hurry. Okay, just go past that real quick. This is a good statement. Terrell Johnson's a Christian attorney. He died years ago. It says this: human DNA contains more organized information, or organized like this, than the Encyclopedia Britannica. If the full text of the encyclopedia were to arrive in computer code from outer space, most people would regard this as proof of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. When we see it in nature, it's the result of random forces. Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Classical evolutionary theories are a gross oversimplification of an immensely complex, intricate mass of facts. It amazes me that they are swallowed so uncritically and readily and for such a long time by so many scientists without a murmur of protest. I talked about astronomers last week. It means to be surprised to note that the majority of astronomers, probably 2/3 of them, believe in God. Not necessarily the God that I believe in, but they believe in God, a creator. Okay? Among biologists, it's about 1 in 10 among biologists. They don't see any evidence for God because they see evolution. But you think about what happened in Genesis. God created for 6 days. Astronomers see that record of creation with their telescopes every night, exactly as God predicted. I wrote about it. So we're convinced this is right. But what happened on the 6th day? What happened on the 7th day? God rested from his labors. Up until the 7th day, which we're in the 7th day now, he was creating new species. Since man appeared 40,000 years ago, speciation has stopped on this planet. No new species. We're discovering new ones once. We haven't found them yet, but they're not just suddenly appearing on the earth. They've been there all along. Isn't that amazing? The speciation stopped when modern man came on the scene. Just what the Bible says. Which is why biologists don't see the evidence for God, because they don't see God's work going on right now. Because God stopped doing this stuff. Is God a wonderful? Isn't he amazing? It just blows my mind. We have Dr. Ernst Mayr at Art Darnus. No educated person any longer questions the validity of the so-called theory of evolution, which is now known to be a simple fact. None. He's an educated man. I respect his education. But professing to be wise, they became fools. And then finally, this one will close down neat. I get them up here. Scientists who utterly reject evolution may be one of the fastest growing controversial minorities. And when they question it, they're criticized in the press for it. If you have the call as a scientist to question evolution, you can lose your tenure at universities. I'll never publish in a magazine again. They will blacklist you because you dare challenge Darwin. Astronomers are welcome this all the time, not biologists. Most close-minded group on the planet. They're coming around slowly. Lee Strobel, a Christian writer, says that there's this absolutely mind-boggling procedure, the folding of complex protein, that helped lead biology professor Dean Kenyon to repudiate the conclusion of his own book on the chemical origin of life, and concluded that nothing short of an intelligence could have created intricate cellular structures. So some people are coming around. He's since been blacklisted too, by the way, by the biological community. What brains he even put together probably been blacklisted by these guys. Now, I'm going to end with this chilling thing that's thought about Darwinism. Where it's lived today in our culture. Just 100 years ago, Marxism and eugenics struck many. You know what eugenics are, don't you, by the way? It means good genetic control. And we're gonna have a better human race by killing off the retarded, the deformed, the Jews, the blacks, etc. Have a better gene pool. That's what eugenics is all about. This brilliant fact-based schemes for improving human well-being came out of Darwinism. Okay? These pseudoscientific ideologies come into the most lethal regimes in history, the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany. In fact, in Nazi Germany, Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda, used Margaret Sanger's treatise on eugenics, which gave rise to, guess what? Planned Parenthood, as the basis for going against the Jews and exterminating the Jews in Europe, World War II. So that goes back to Charles Darwin. If it's a survival of the fittest, let's kill off the unfit. So we have a better human race to go forward with. And Jesus says, no, you gotta love everybody and care for everybody. Diametrically opposed ideologies. How you can never accept an evolutionist on face value. So they have 2 pages.
Is that where we get situational ethics from?
No,
Like
it's
in
not.
In
It's related
humanism,
to it.
it's related somehow?
It's related to it, though. It's not true. What Darwin wrote. This makes my blood curdle. At some future period, not very distant as measured by the centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The more civilized so-called Caucasian races have beaten the Turkish hollow in the struggle for existence. Looking to the world of not very distant date, when an endless number of lower races will have been eliminated by the higher civilized races throughout the world.
Wow.
Okay? When you ask someone, says, I believe in evolution, well, ask me about this. What do you think about that statement from Darwin himself? See what they say. How he begins that federal real fast.
You know, as far as the backdrop, was he referring to a Turkish hollow? Was he referring to Muslim nations?
Anybody in the Middle East, Turkey on East. Yeah. Would include the Jews, would include Jesus. So, I'm convinced that the theory of evolution is going to be one of the biggest jokes in the history of the future. Posterity will marvel at such a flimsy and devious hypothesis could be accepted with the incredible credulity that it has been all these years. You ever had a textbook in evolution when you were in high school? 80% of the pictures in those books were false pictures, made up, or proved to be wrong later on, but they're still in the books. I'm not kidding.
How do you battle that?
The truth. The truth. You got to know the truth. And it'll set you free. Yeah.
Well, now we're getting to the point. Well, do you remember Dr. Lewis Leakey?
Mhm.
How the Cro-Magnon man?
No, it was in Australopithecus.
But they found like a toe,
Mhm.
and they create a creature.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing. It's
Well, there's some scientific basis for that, but to say it was a human being is going a little bit of a stretch. That's a big stretch. to say it was
but
a
people
human being.
believe it.
Well, people believe it. Because to believe that there is a God responsible for this, I just can't have that. Anything but that. How about purple unicorns? Fine. Well, those gods aren't involved, but purple unicorns. Because if God's involved, I can't have that. It's not about the facts, folks. It's about ideologies and belief systems. That's where the clash occurs. And that's how you handle that with people that believe in evolution. Talk about the facts. Know your facts. Present them. Get their opinion. Get their reaction. If they knew what Darwin said about racial war, a lot would probably back off from real fast, wouldn't they? Yeah.
I'm noticing a lot in the History Channel or whatever, they're attributing a lot now to aliens.
Oh, yeah.
Aliens have come, and that's how this has all
Yeah.
happened. So, I mean, what's the best comeback for that?
Look at the odds of making even a protein by chance, first of all.
Right.
My personal belief, life is going to be extremely rare in this universe.
Okay.
Extreme. In fact, we'll be the only life in the world, in the universe is on this planet, right? It's my guess. Obviously, we'll probably find life anyplace else. If we do find life, it's probably a very simple life. Microbes, maybe plants, simple animals. Intelligent life is very, very rare because the Bible tells us that God breathed into Adam his spirit and man became a living soul. And that's unique. That's unique in the history of the world. So I don't think we're going to find any ET, frankly. I'll be surprised if we do. I think that the crazy drive on NASA to find life on Mars is a pipe dream. Something of zinging is worth anything in terms of science.
How many million miles of what is in me?
About 12 million miles of DNA is in your body.
I can tell you,
If you unwrap it all, string it out, uncoil it. It's up in very tight.
you take a look, they're hard miles.
Okay, the last question, go ahead.
I know that. Oh, there's a part that says, I'm gonna talk fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen fast too, I know, yes, I'm not covered that, I covered it earlier, but yeah. Okay, you want to take it over?
Guys, let's give
Thank
Richard
you.
a couple of comments. I don't know whose hot topic this was that asked for this question, how old is the earth? But I'll tell you what, you sure got more than you bargained for. I mean, you did a great job. Thank you, Richard, very much. And this is just a tip of the iceberg kind of deal. So a couple of quick comments, and then we got to get out of here because they're coming in with another class. So I'm going to have to hold you off, Judy. What occurs to me, one of the things that occurred to me is that if you're a die-hard evolutionist, then you have to also be a die-hard racist. And if you are a die-hard creationist, then you have the opposite of that. You can't be, because you have to promote life, and you have to promote love for all people everywhere. And it seems to me that there's one side of this issue or the other. And I would like to believe that we're on that right side of that. So anyway, that's one comment. And then the other thing is, if you guys would like to ask more questions, feel free to use our email address to do that. And if you're okay with it, give me an email address that everybody could just send directly to you. Would that be? Yeah, so and then that would be a little bit easier. That way I don't have to play middleman for you, because sometimes I'm very busy and I don't get the things for a week at a time. So if you want to ask more questions, because we're out of time.
I'll actually put it on the site, his email, right on the thing, so that
That'd be
people can
great.
do it.
That'd be fantastic. And then maybe we can do another one of these, because I got other stuff. Like, let's do one on dinosaurs. Let's do one on the. How many of you would like to know about the Great Flood? Is there evidence for the Great Flood? I bet Richard would be able to help us with that. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do in the future. So I'm excited about that. We have an election coming up. They're always important. Elections are always important. So what role do we play as believers in the political process in our country and in the world? I think it's important that we know that, and the Scripture has things to say about that. So we're going to look to Scripture and next week and talk about that and learn some of those things. Then we're going to jump back into our series, Delighting in the Trinity. I got two more series, one on salvation. I think there's evidence of the Trinity in salvation, and there's evidence in the Trinity in terms of the believer's life and the instruction that we have from the apostles on what does it look like now to be a believer, that life, that lifestyle, that mindset more in particular. And I think there's evidence of the Trinity in that. But guys, bottom line, it all ends up back at love. God is love, God loved the Son, and the Son loved us, so God loved us on behalf of the Son. And that process right there is the evidence of the Trinity. We're going to see that in salvation. We're going to see that in our life as a believer and the mindset that we have in our relationship with God. Okay, so that's a lot. We do have a potluck coming up. Linda, what's the date again? I'll send you out an email this week, but we're going to do a potluck because we're back from the summer.
14th of October.
14th of October. So mark that down. Next week we'll send around, what you're going to bring, that list, and we'll start preparing for that. And I think that that's all for right now. So we'll see you guys back here next week at 10:30. And they're not meeting on the door yet, so let's have a quick word of prayer. Lord, thank you for all of these people that come and are attending this class and are part of this process. I'm so honored and blessed to be part of this, and I thank you for allowing me to be in the position where I can have this influence with people, but boy, I should get way more out of it from them than they get out of it from me, and I know that. So thank you so much. Thank you for Richard. Thank you for all of them, those here that are part of this, because their minds are so creative and they're so intelligent. They bring so much to make this such a rich and full group, and we ask that you continue to bless it and grow this class so that many more can continue to benefit from all of these great minds and these people that you have created and have given these gifts to. We ask that you just be with everybody. We don't know everyone's needs. We pray for Jackie with her surgery, and we thank you so much for the way we were allowed to give to them and their missions project. And we look forward to the next one for October. Be with us as we go all of our separate ways. Protect us, love us, show us who you are, comfort us, give us wisdom and insight. We ask these things in your name. Amen. May you grow in the grace and the knowledge